Thank you for watching the Housing Oregon YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. Slide decks from the presenters are going to be available below. Thanks for watching.
Good morning, everyone. I am Edward Brown. I am the Development Applications Team Manager at Oregon Housing Community Services. We're a brand new team, and up here with me, I've got a couple speakers. I'll let them introduce themselves, but we're excited to go ahead and share with you more information about the ORCA, or the Oregon Centralized Application System. And once we're finished presenting, then we'll go ahead and break into questions and answers and see how many we can get to today. All right, so with that, I'll go ahead and just pass to my right.
Hey everybody, I'm Hattie Ayatt. I'm the Housing Production Manager, and I manage the production analysts that are assigned to the projects.
Good morning, I'm Amy Cole, and I am the Development Resources Assistant Director.
Good morning, I'm Tanya Stigray. I'm one of 5 technical advisors that we'll talk about soon. Yep.
Thanks, Robin. Is that a little better? Perfect.
Just going to have him hit that slide. All right, thank you. As I mentioned, we are here to talk about the Oregon Centralized Application System, or ORCA, as we love to call it. This is a system through which the Affordable Rental Housing Division now allocates loans, grants, and tax credit funding through both the construction of new housing, also the preservation of existing affordable housing in Oregon. So previously, OHCS used a notice of funding availability system, a competitive NOFA system that you may be familiar with that term. The older approach involved competitive funding rounds for various resources, which led to a fragmented and cumbersome process. And as funding in the state of Oregon has increased, we've got more and more programs. The number of NOFA that we released each year grew organically with that. We kind of recognized that that was coming to a head. We expect to see continued investment from the state of Oregon. And so that really became sort of an untenable situation for growth. And so over the last year, we've been working on completely redesigning and switching gears with that. And so we came up with a centralized approach, or more of a universal approach to putting out funding for the state of Oregon. So my team, the applications team, plays a critical role in administering the ORCA system. We focus on quality assurance and ensure that applications meet all the necessary standards. We are tracking and facilitating communication with development partners, helping ensure that standards are met for all of the applications coming in. And then we also focus a lot on continuous improvement of this. So it's a brand new system. There's a lot of little kinks and bugs. We're constantly working on those every day to make that better. So we're incredibly excited about the potential of the ORCA. And with that, let me see, we'll go ahead and run to the next slide. Okay. So the ORCA transforms the way that we process requests by creating a more structured and streamlined life cycle for projects that spans from project concept to financial closing. The NOFA were scattered throughout the years, I kind of mentioned in the last slide. Now with the ORCA, we have a centralized system. You could call it more of a universal system. All funding requests are going to, in one way or another, start in that same pipeline. And we'll talk about the development life cycle, kind of each of these steps throughout our presentation, and talk about the ORCA application process itself is really 3 core steps that are sandwiched in the middle here. And in a later slide, we highlight those, and I'll be able to point out exactly which 3 steps those are. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Tanya. She's going to tell us about the technical advisors and how they're involved in the kind of the first stages of this development life cycle.
All right, so why do technical advisors exist? We are a new function within the ARH section. The technical advisor positions were created with this new ORCA process. They were created in direct feedback for the process needing to be clearer than multiple NOFA offerings, just as Ed had said, and provide better partnerships with OHCS in order for us to team up with developers to better understand the production of housing now and your pipeline for the future. Ways in which that we can help is that we help navigate this new ORCA process. We're here to talk to folks about when they get tripped up, when, what does this mean? How do I get to the next phase, or what are they asking for here? We help developers access ARH resources as well, including pre-development loans, capacity building loans, and land acquisition loans, and what we refer to as LAP. But one of our biggest roles is to try and establish relationships and be a liaison with developers. We want to learn about your current projects. We want to know about your future pipeline, whether it's under construction and underwriting. We would like people to put in intake forms for projects that they're thinking about 3 to 5 years out, so that we can have an understanding of what the pipeline looks like in Oregon, what your capacities are to build additional rental units, and in order for us to be able to inform the legislature about the capacity of Oregon, what can developers do, how many units can we get on the ground, and what type of construction it is, whether it's preservation, whether it's rehab, whether it's new construction. I'm ready for the next slide. So OHCS has funding set asides, and we have done this to ensure the geographic distribution of resources, as well as address historic inequities to accessing those resources. We are prioritizing access to the resources through these set asides, and 25% of those are going towards organizational set asides. Those organizational set asides are culturally specific organizations, or CSOs, tribal housing groups, as well as nonprofits developing in rural areas. The 75% of the ORCA the funds are then distributed by 3 regions: Eastern, Metro, and Western. If an organizational set-aside project moves forward, we are ensuring that funds are still available to that 25% of organizational set-aside. So it would first be drawn from the geographical set-aside and then the organizational set-aside. Next slide. Oh, he's already there. Okay. So the information on this slide and the way that the geographical set-aside was set up was based on the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis. There is a map, there is a link to a map to be able to put in your address to see whether or not your project falls within urban and rural, and also within these geographic set-asides.
All right. Next on that project development lifecycle, going to talk about the pre-qualification and registration. So it's kind of tucked in there before before intake and just after project development. We're able to review and pre-qualify development partners and consultants at the time of application, but also any time before. So with the ORCA, we now certify or for pre-qualification on an annual basis. So instead of having to do this step as sort of a paperwork step for all 13 NOFA, we're able to do this once a year now. And so it's helping us streamline that process and sort of get that done ahead of time in many cases. And so we're kind of excited about it. It's a new system for us to be able to get a lot of this component completed. And then we also have an online registration page on our webpage where we can go ahead and view that information. I'll show that on the next slide. But the form itself, so to become pre-qualified, you come to our website, you fill out the pre-qualification certification form request. And what we ask for is portfolio performance, development expertise, and ask about organizational continuity. So both developers and consultants conclude with an OHCS integrity certification form, basically just ensuring developer good standing within the state. And then from there, we're able to go ahead and put it on a registry that you've been pre-qualified and that you're ready for requesting funding through the state. All right, give me just a moment. Piloting everything here. All right. Another thing that we like to, that I've been telling people about is this pre-qualification registry that we have online. So if you come to our new ORCA web pages, there's a list in the left-hand navigation, go down to pre-qualification. From there is a link to this registry. This is something that OHCS has started a couple of years past. And We've started to collect information. People have asked us, hey, we think this needs to be done at a state level. We're trying to find like-minded developers for affordable housing. Is there any way that we can have a centralized location for that? And so the registry is something that we've actually started. You can go to this webpage and you can enter information about your organization, what kind of development partner you are, whether you're an architect or a lender, whether you're a developer. You can give information, details about what kind of housing that you're putting out there. So whether you're serving 30% units or you're sticking really primarily to 60%, you can provide a lot of information. What's great about this registry is that it's searchable. So you say, I'm curious to know who's in Salem. You could type in Salem. We're going to pop up everybody who's registered and said that they're working out of Salem. Likewise, you can look for 30%. You can look for architects, and you can see who's come to this website to register themselves to be able to be found. I like to call it the classifieds for housing development. And so we've married that with this new pre-qualification system. So as you're being pre-qualified, that's going into this registry as that you've been pre-qualified. And so if it says no, it's not to say that you're not pre-qualified, just means that you're either not current or you haven't requested yet. Not that you couldn't be. So that's our new pre-qualification registry. We're marrying those two things. Also, one other quick point that I wanted to state is just that you can keep it as brief as just your entity name and that you are pre-qualified. But if you want to, you can come to the registry side of this. Again, that link is on that same pre-qualification page, and you can enter a lot more information about your entity. So that's something we're excited about as well. Okay, so these 4 chevrons represent truly the ORCA application process, not necessarily the entire system, but the application process. First, we have the intake form. And after you've filled out that intake form, I feel like I'm on the wrong slide. No, I'm good. Okay. After you filled out the intake form, you enter into the impact assessment step of the ORCA. So we have the intake forms kind of there on the front end. It's an important first step for the ORCA application. Then we have those 3 steps of the application process. I'll talk more about the intake in the next slides, but once the intake form is reviewed, qualifying projects move to the first step, which is the impact assessment. And Amy is going to explain and talk more about the impact step and what we go through with the evaluation standards. Then we have the financial eligibility step. That comes after we've taken projects to the Housing Stability Council for a recommendation. The financial eligibility step focuses on reviewing financial structure, ensuring that it meets OHCS's requirements for sustainability and affordability. And after Amy, Hattie's going to go ahead and tell us more about that step, and then also tell us more about the final step of the ORCA, which is the commitment step. In the final step, after financial closing, by the time the project reaches this point, it has been thoroughly vetted. The commitment step involves ensuring that all funding sources are secured and that the project is ready for development. And from there, the project is then, for those remaining ghosted out steps you can hardly see in this lighting, from there, the project constructed, it's leased up, and then it enters long-term service with our asset management compliance folks for 60 years or more in many cases. All right, so the intake form is the initial entry point for everyone, for all funding requests, whether it's for development or even for pre-development resources. All proposals come through the ORCA system through the intake. It provides a high-level overview of essential project details, such as location, scope, and preliminary financial information. Unlike the previous system where submissions were reviewed during a single funding cycle, the ORCA enables us to have early engagement with developers. Again, the project concept happens out in the public with our partners in local communities. Once a development has been thought of, conceived of, and is beginning to develop, that's when OHCS would like to engage with the public, which is a very big change from previous years, where we were essentially asking for you to apply to a NOFA that really asked projects to be essentially shovel ready. Now we're asking to know, hey, are you developing a project? Are there ways that we could help you design it in a way that's going to be more successful for funding? So this gives OHCS, the intake gives OHCS a clearer picture for housing developments in the pipeline, allowing for better forecasting and planning, especially regarding future funding needs for statewide housing demands. The intake form offers a snapshot of the project's early stages. So it's designed to be completed quickly and in one sitting. A lot of our partners have told us it may take them as much as an hour or more. We found that for projects that are further along in development, it typically takes them a little longer to complete than projects that are more in that early concept. Part of that is because there's more information to provide as opposed to an early development, that's more in that concept step where it's like, well, we're not there yet. Skip. So this form helps OHCS understand your project concept and determine the best next steps by submitting early stage ideas through the intake form. Excuse me. We understand not every project is ready with full information at this stage, and we also recognize that certain aspects like the budget, partnerships, and even the project site may change. That's how early on in the planning that we want to get engaged with the community. So no information submitted through the intake form is binding. It simply opens a conversation with OHCS staff about where the project stands and gives us an understanding kind of what the best next steps are. So something I didn't get into these slides, I'll tell you, so far we've received 201 intake submission forms, which represents a project essentially for each one of those. So that's exciting. And that really spans a wide gamut from projects that are really, considered shovel ready to projects that are only considering the potential for breaking ground in 2030 or later. That's how much, that's how further on in development we've started to collect information. That's really helping us talk to the legislature about the need. All right. One more slide on intake. Once the intake form is reviewed, qualifying projects move to the first step, which is the impact assessment. A pro quorum work center is then created as an online project portal for OHCS to communicate with developers about the project, be able to share files back and forth. ProLink's ProQuorum software that we use for this online portal, it also gives us a calendar view, enables us to track critical deadlines and also be able to, as a task tracking management system. So we're able to outline really clearly what partners need to get done and marked as completed for us to review and analyze. And so that provides a lot of communication. Is a really great system that we've had and we've been deploying for a few years, but with the ORCA system, we're really employing it in a lot more meaningful ways than we have in the past. And so we're really leaning into that system. All right. I'll go ahead and hand it over to Amy, and she's going to tell us, oh no, actually I have one more slide. I apologize. No, we do it. No, I am going to hand it to Amy. Thank you.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about impact assessment. The objective of this step is for OHCS to evaluate key aspects of projects and work toward a letter of intent. This is where staff looks at early project information on in a number of areas, and the next slide has even more information. So these are just a few of the areas that we look at: resident services, MWESB and equity and racial justice, construction costs, funding needs, site and location, and focus populations. And this is very early in the project process. So we know that this won't be the full end of the information that you give us on these areas. That's Hattie's part later. So next slide. So we have quite a few areas that we look at. I think we keep saying 19, but I counted 20. This is a list of standards from A to Z from the impact assessment step. So staff looks at the information that is submitted and then looks at our standards and evaluates what has been submitted against those standards. Projects can stay in this step for up to a year to complete their application. All projects have different variables and may be entering this process at different stages. So the great thing about this new process, the ORCA, is that it allows projects to move forward at their own pace. So another thing, many of the items on this slide should look familiar as requirements that you've seen if you submitted a NOFA in the past or been part of our NOFA processes. So as I mentioned, once all of the information is uploaded into a project's work center, the applications team reviews to be sure that everything's complete, that everything has been submitted, and that the application charge is paid. And then they notify impact assessment reviewers that the application is ready for review. Once reviewers take a look, once reviewers receive the notification, we assign the application to someone on the resources team and a few other key staff who are reviewing different parts of the application. This is also similar to our old NOFA process where there were different groups of people looking at different parts of the applications, and they complete their reviews. If all standards are not met, the application is returned to the applicant for additional information or explanation. And if an application meets all standards, it goes to Housing Stability Council for an early reservation of funds, which we're calling a letter of intent. And then the project moves to the financial feasibility step, which Hattie will talk about in a few minutes. There are a few questions, if you go to the next slide, that we've received quite a bit. So I just thought I'd go over them here. So one, I was just talking about a little bit, who completes impact assessment analyses. And so teams with very different expertise are looking at different parts of the applications. Staff from development resources, my team, production takes a quick look at it, and our state architect also looks at it. We have someone also looking at MWESB separately. And then another question is, what happens if an application doesn't meet standards? I talked about that a little bit. We send it back to the applicant for clarification, and then we'll look at it again once we receive that information back. And then hopefully it can proceed forward. And then what happens when the impact assessment is complete? Well, we take it to the next available Housing Stability Council for approval, and it moves to the next step, financial feasibility, which Hattie's going to tell us about in just a minute. Can you go to the next slide?
I feel like you're building me up.
I know. I forgot I had this slide. So one way that you can track what resources are available is that we have a funding allocation. That's a long term. We have a dashboard, an ORCA dashboard that tells everybody what we've allocated to projects and what resources still remain. This can be found on our webpage and on our ORCA webpage. And it's updated monthly after our Housing Stability Council meetings if ORCA reservations have been made. And let's see. So this shows the part that's not on this screenshot is a set aside tracker that shows how much is remaining and how much has been allocated for each geographic set aside, as well as the culturally specific, tribal, and rural nonprofit set aside. And so that is, you can't see this here, but it is part of, if you scroll down when you're on the webpage, it's available. A question that we've been getting or thinking about and also getting somewhat is what happens if one of the set-asides is fully subscribed? Because we're seeing a lot of applications. We've been going to Housing Stability Council for letters of intent. And the answer to that is when and if a set-aside is fully subscribed, OHCS will open a wait list for that set-aside, for projects for that set-aside. After the October Housing Stability Council meeting, it is likely that our Western geography will be fully subscribed. We will be releasing a technical advisory later this week with details about this and details about the wait list. So That's all I have. Ready now we're ready for Hattie.
Well, boy, she built that up. I hope that I can live up to that expectation there, Amy. So I'm going to talk about the financial eligibility step. So what is the objective for this step? We're going to evaluate the financial aspects of the project. Our key requirements that we're looking for submission is going to be the lender letters of intent, the well-developed construction cost estimates, and then a financial eligibility pro forma. So Ed talked a little bit about the intake process and the impact assessment. And those of you who have gotten to that might notice that the pro forma doesn't really have a lot of details about the budget and the deal specifics. So that's where my team is going to come in. So you've been to Housing Stability Council, you've got your not to exceed amount. Now the work's going to come in where you'll be assigned a production analyst. And I think that might be on the next slide, Ed. I'm sorry. There we go. Yep. So you'll be assigned a production analyst to work on the project with you. We're going to be looking at those numbers and we're going to say, okay, we're looking at OHCS requirements. We're going to look at your lender. If you have a potential lender that's in the project, we're going to fine tune that not to exceed amount. And the goal is to take that not to exceed and whittle it down to an amount that works for the project. And any unused proceeds would then go back into the ORCA for other projects to be funded. So you might remember this stage looks a little bit like what would happen post Housing Stability Council in the NOFA process. And we kind of flip-flop that. So production analysts used to be assigned after reservation letter. We're going to go ahead of that now. We're going to work with you to get your project ready to go. Projects in this stage live, I believe it's about 6 months that we're anticipating projects will be here. Admittedly, we only have 6 so far that have come in. So we're all learning this together. So we're really excited to see those be working through the process. We are going to ask all due diligence. We're fully utilizing the Procorum Work Center. I know in the past, we've gotten comfortable emailing documents back and forth, and we're going to put all documents in the work center so everybody can access and can see what's been uploaded. We also have tasks. Ed's team has worked really hard to put our due diligence checklist into the tasks in Procorum so that we can actually check those off and mutually agree, yep, I submitted this form and yes, it's acceptable. So really excited about that. And then again, we're looking to move to the next step, which would be the commitment step. So next slide, Ed. So what do we do in commitment? Commitment, we're going to finalize all the details. We're going to go back and say, okay, we've got this really good pro forma. We've got a really solid project. We have a outline for a closing time frame. We're going to do a reservation letter at that time, which is the traditional reservation letter where y'all will sign on the line and say, yep, we agree to these terms. This is the funding we're going to get for the project. Then we start in with our final, what we call, final for closing or final for finance committee. Don't have to go to finance committee for these just to tell you, but that's what my production staff in the room, they're familiar with that. We're going to be looking at that final numbers and final estimates, and then we're looking for permits, permit ready letters, building permits. We want your investors and your lenders to have their commitments coming in, and we're looking at the commitment stage. We're going to be closing within 6 months. So that's really going to be the accelerated process of get our calls going, get everything, get all of the team together working towards that closing. I do. Oh, I kind of covered that one already. I did, admittedly, did not do talking points ahead of time like everyone else. So we'll have the reservation letter with the final, narrowed down exactly what works for the project dollar amount. We're going to be engaging with the funders. We're going to settle on a closing date. Again, mark off all those tasks in Procorum, upload your documents into the Procorum work centers, and then finalize everything so we can get these closed and be able to start construction. All right, so I'll hand back over to Ed here about where to find the ORCA.
All right. One of the exciting components of the ORCA as well, we have so many new systems, is all of our brand new web pages. And this may not shock you, but you can Google Oregon ORCA and find it. It'll take you directly to our new pages. We have several new pages. We have, I'm going to admit, in the past, and all government web pages are difficult to navigate, but our communications team has really spent a lot of time with our staff to come up with a very well thought out, well designed, well communicated, and set up a series of pages for the ORCA. We're excited that they're continuing to migrate that and filter that out into the rest of our website eventually, but the ORCA pages are perfect. I mean, they're not perfect, but they're very good. And so I want to say, you can go to our website, you can find all of this information. I could say that with confidence and with a straight face. If you do go to our main landing page and you scroll down to housing development, you're going to see that we're the first link there, just under housing development, the guys with hard hats. So you can get to our, if you go to our main landing page, that's where you can also find our ORCA pages. From there, you're going to find, our ORCA manual. You're going to find a lot of information about each ORCA step that we've shared with you here. You're going to find resources, how many funding resources, but also resources for how to get help. We have trainings. We've created a lot of YouTube trainings that you can go and ingest at your own leisure. We have a questions portal. That's also something that's new and exciting about the ORCA system is we have systemized how you can go about getting answers to the questions that you have. OHCS has grown. We have a lot of new staff, a lot of new faces, and it can be hard to know who you need to reach out to. And we have a system for that. You can come into it at triages for us, mostly where your question's going, but we also have staff behind it, and they're going to help you direct those questions to the expert that you didn't know you needed. It also helps us track response times. We have, the portal has answered now over very close to 300 questions, the vast majority of which have been answered within 3 days. We're tracking that, and we're constantly striving to get better. For those questions that are really great, that help us clarify components of this new system, we've created a frequently asked questions page, but we're really diligent about making sure that those are really good questions. We don't just put in 300 possible things for you to sift through. Our FAQ is very concise, and it helps us relay information that you need to know. Otherwise, if it's at all possible, we're just updating our website to be clearer, and that's what we're doing with the vast majority of those questions. So also you can find in our new pages a link to the intake form, right? If you have a request, if you have a project concept and you want to go ahead and get it into OHCS and say, hey, we're out here, we have a development, go ahead and submit an intake form. We're interested to know more about it and help you relate to what are resources that might be available for your project. Also, you can find our pre-qualification request form there. You can go ahead and get pre-qualified for the year at any time. You don't have to wait before you submit an intake form. All of those things can be found on our new web pages. And then one link specifically, I have it circled here. So this is what the new ORCA pages look like. Again, we have that left-hand navigation. There's specifically one that says get help with ORCA. This page is chock full of, if you have any questions, if you need any help, you can find it on this page. We have an FAQ. We tell you office hours. So every other week, we have an hour for you to just log in and talk to OHCS staff and give us your questions. Sometimes it's really hard to put a question in writing. Sometimes it's really hard to answer a question in writing. So we have this live space where we can just talk about any questions you have. It's really open forum. We have the applications team there. We're there to help support with the application, but we also have other OHCS experts there. We call it office hours. So you can go there at any time and register for the next one we have available. You can find contact information for our new technical advisory team if you want to reach out to them. You can find contact information for the applications team. And also that's where you can find our training videos. So if you have any questions, if you need any help or support, you're going to find it on that page. And if you don't, you can go into our new questions portal and you can provide feedback. That's also another part of our questions portal is you can shout into that thing as loud as you want. We will get your feedback there. With that, I think we're ready to head to questions.
Okay, I'm going to help with questions. All right. I'm going to give you this mic and then I'm going to go get a different mic. So
I have a few, but I'll just start with one to give other folks time. Wondering for sponsors who have multiple projects that they're interested in submitting, how should they navigate the intake part of the process, knowing that OHCS is limiting sponsors to 2 projects per phase? Is there an projects they'd like to move forward in what priority, or how are you evaluating that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So submit all of your projects through the intake form. There's no limit to that. But yes, we are limiting at most 2 projects per step of the ORCA. That's helping just limit the amount of staff, the onslaught of projects that you have. Again, over 201 different intake forms. Also, we don't have LIHTC available quite yet. And so we're holding those projects. So if you have already got 2 projects in that first step, the impact assessment step, then we're going to hold your projects, and you can prioritize which projects come through. And you can even change your mind. We've had developers do that. We would appreciate it if you didn't change your mind every day, but we could work with you. And so you just send your questions, and you can contact the applications team and say, hey, it turns out this project is maybe not moving forward as quickly as another project that I've submitted through the intake. I'd like to bring that into the impact assessment, potentially get that application finished first and take it to the Housing Stability Council. And then we'll bring in the other one once that one's moved into the next step. If we have
any, okay, I'll be the runner, getting my steps today. Okay, I have 2. You said west is full, but there's no category of set aside for just west. That's what I heard. So does that include southwest, like Grants Pass? And then stage 2, we're kind of stuck waiting for the 2 impact assessment, allowance. And so in order to get our project moving along, when's the cutoff going to happen for the 2024 funding versus then having to switch to tax credit? Gives you time to think about who's going to answer that question. Amy, okay. All right.
Okay, as you can see on this slide, there is a western set aside. It includes the North Coast, Southwest, and Willamette Valley, and it is not yet fully subscribed, but we expect it to be after the next Housing Stability Council meeting, which is on October 4th. So we plan to start a wait list for that set aside. Yes. Okay, the second question was LIHTC, if you want to, okay, go ahead. Can you say it again? When you have to switch. Okay, so LIHTC is not currently available yet. And I don't have a date for when that might happen. Also, that would be a great question to bring to the QAP meeting tomorrow morning. Yep.
Additional questions out there?
So this sort of relates to the question that was just asked, but in terms of the funding wait list, how do you envision that wait list working so that it isn't just a continuously filling funnel that gets more and more full?
Thank you for that question. We thought we might get it. We are limiting impact assessment to 2 projects. That's waitlist and non-waitlist, so that we don't have, 15 projects from one developer and the waitlist just waiting for the funds to reopen. So it's still the 2 per step limit for projects, and you can have 2 on the wait list. You could have 1 in impact assessment, none on the wait list, and 1 not. I mean, it can So it's still to an impact assessment, whether on the wait list or not. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Okay. Back. I might ask also, how many in here have applications currently in the impact assessment phase? Raise your hand. Okay.
Thank you. There's been a lot of work that's gone into this. We can tell, we can feel that. Thanks. And we also can feel you implementing all the feedback that we've been giving since you started this. So thanks a lot. It's a big lift. It's really a shift, you know, an intentional shift. There's a lot to manage on your end. And I think the sharing of data really helps. So as we're all trying to manage our pipeline, more information you can share about caps or timelines will be really helpful for us. I'm really glad we didn't acquire a piece of property in the Western region in the last, you know, this summer, hearing, you know, first that resource is capped, for example. The data and dashboards, I think, would be a tremendous help. If we could see the list of projects, by what region, at what phase they're in, that kind of information would allow us, all of us, to better plan where we go across the state and where we align with the ORCA process. I'm going to apologize for this real quick. None of you started with this. It's a whale of a project, and it's the elephant in the room. Sorry for that. My question is, given the limitation of resources and 200 applications or 200 in the intake process, can you give us like a time frame of, like, if all of those projects were successful, given current resources, and I know every year we're going to ask for more, and that's important. We're up for being the advocates for more resources. But similar to a wait list in a property, when we're engaging with residents, similar to a Section 8 or a housing choice voucher, when people call or housing authorities do analysis of the wait list, we're able to say, like, how long is that wait list for that 1-bedroom unit or at that price range? Wondering if you could provide us that same kind of information, given the 200 projects in the pipeline currently, given the current resources, what's our timeline for getting these through the pipeline? Are we now bringing intake projects to you that are 10 years out? And if that's the case, I think we would rather focus resources somewhere else. So that's the question about, given the current volume you have and the current resources you know you have, what's the timeline?
Okay, Ed.
You'll have to remind me which points I'm forgetting. With the data component, I can tell you that we are working on that. As we talked about the wait list, we're working on additional components that we can share. And the same with the current dashboard that we have. Honestly, that took us a little bit longer than I expected. I think that we are working on adding to that dashboard additional pieces, and so that's an ongoing work. And I think that as we build the wait list, we're going to work on that too. So hopefully it's going to come sooner than later. What I'm trying to say is we're actively working on that at this very moment. Then with
So you mentioned 200 plus projects in intake, and how long will it take for those projects to get through? It's really important to remember that some of those projects, like that's a somewhat helpful piece of data, because some of those projects are trying to move into impact assessment, and they are. But many of them, as Ed said, are being held for LIHTC resources, aren't ready to move to impact assessment. They might be 5 years out. And so I think, you know, and for us, the data changes every day almost, in terms of how many projects are currently in impact assessment, who's ready to move forward to the Housing Stability Council, who's staying in intake, who has to go back to the sponsor for more information. And so I think it's a big number, but it's not going to tell us how long it's going to take projects to get through the process, because some haven't even started, right, to get funded. I think the place to look really is the number of projects in impact assessment and how quickly they're ready to get moved forward for evaluation and then to Housing Stability Council. And that's very hard for us to predict, because when projects come in and we're evaluating them against those standards, some projects are ready to go to Housing Stability Council after the first review. Many are sent back to sponsors for clarification, additional information, because they're not quite meeting the standard yet. And then they'll come back for another review, and then they'll be ready to go, you know, and then some we've gone back a couple of times. And so we're really focused, because we've moved away from scoring the way we did with NOFAs, to make sure that everybody meets the standard that is outlined in the ORCA for each of those many standards, right? And so I know this is not the answer you wanted. I did take notes though, so we can try to get more clear information to sponsors in a, you know, more than we are currently providing on the dashboard. And we're also trying to figure out how to do that in a way when data changes so rapidly in terms of where projects are and how they're in what step and what place. Really, did they finish impact assessment? Are they on their way? Because we also have plenty of projects that are in impact assessment, but they're just taking a while, and they have up to a year to complete that part of the application. And some projects might take a year. So it's, yeah, you can see why it's a little bit difficult, and we're still trying to figure out how to get our arms around all of that. But really, and also really appreciate the question and the information, the feedback.
One other piece, I think also, as we go to share more information about that wait list, is in less terms of how long is really, or like how much money is available, will kind of help you determine like, well, how far down that wait list are we in terms of dollars. And as we go into the next legislative session, I mean, I don't remember what the exact numbers are, but we've asked for a lot. And so depending on the outcome of this next session, it might be shorter, it might be longer, but that's one of the unpredictable components of how long it'll take, is it how much can we get in resources to tackle that need.
And just a comment here from the production side. So as we're working on these projects and we're seeing them come through the impact assessment, one of the pieces that we can utilize is you guys being open and transparent with us. If you have a project that you know is not going to be ready for closing, you can tell us, hey, we're going to get this into impact assessment. We're just going to hang on to it. We're just going to get it in there. We don't need it to go to we can get it into intake. We don't need it to go into impact assessment and go to Housing Stability Council. We're just giving you our pipeline. So working with us as a partner to be able to keep projects moving forward that are truly shovel ready, permit ready, ready to get those units on the ground that are much needed in Oregon.
Good morning. You guys have a unique opportunity right now to really track how long those projects are sitting, because from a developer perspective, we're also advocating to our government officials, and I think showing kind of the backlog of, you know, projects that are waiting out there. I think this is a great system. Obviously, it's going to kind of change and move along. But if there's any way to track what those projects look like that are coming through the ORCA, the ones that you do have to send back, I think that's really helpful for us too, for how we can be better support to your organization down the road too.
Does anybody want to respond on that? Ed?
I get to brag about the applications team again. We are tracking everything that we can track. We're coming after all of that data. We don't even know which elements of that are even going to be useful yet. We're tracking it. At a future time, we're going to crunch all those numbers. We're going to be able to tell you exactly how long it takes from X to X. We're even working on, what are the elements that are the projects are failing the most. How can we create a better system of communicating what we are expecting to see versus, and then how can we support that better? And in addition to that, we're even tracking, like what standards are never failed. I mean, are we really making an impact having a standard in this way? How can we improve that? So we're tracking all the timing components. We're tracking all of the everything to do with our review, and yeah, we're really eager about that, and it's something that we're getting very geek about. We're over recording everything at this point because we just don't know what we're going to find useful 3 years from now. And so, yes.
Lots of learning happening right now. Any other questions? Okay.
Hello, I just wanted to confirm I'm understanding something correctly. It sounds like if I want tax credits whenever they become available, I could submit an application today. And I just want to confirm that's correct. And if so, how far into the application process will I get before I just wait?
Great. As we're like, who's going to take this one? It's not that difficult, so I'll take it. So at this point, tax credits are not available through the application. You can submit an intake and we'll hold it until tax credits are available, and then we'll release those intakes into work centers.
Okay. I'm gonna go back here first and then I'll come to you.
Just wondering, with the theme of whales and elephants, are you looking at any other acronyms that are going to be animal related in the next future? And this also just if there's anything you're excited about besides the acronyms that you'd like to share.
Excitement? Anyone here? Ed has already said lots of exciting things, so I'm not going to give the microphone to him.
Oh, I'll let Tanya go first.
Well, I'm really excited that we have a brand new team of technical advisors. There are 5 of us, and I think it's this great, unique opportunity to build these relationships with developers and to really understand the pipeline. I think it's a wonderful addition to the creation of the ORCA, and I want to encourage folks, specifically those in culturally specific organizations representing tribal nations or nonprofits developing in rural areas. We would love to hear from you, start to establish relationships and understand your pipeline better.
Great. All right. I will say that I'm just excited about this new process because although we are still learning a lot, and our partners are still learning a lot, it just seems to be moving forward. And it's so fun to see something that we had put so many hours. All of us have put so many hours, right? Y'all gave us so much feedback during our engagement that we were able to use to create this process. And internally, the team has been amazing, and we're doing it. We're all doing it together, you all and we are, all together, partners and OHCS staff. So that's really exciting to me. And I think it also gives us a chance to just have a different kind of partnership than maybe we have in the past. And that's great for us and for you.
I think one of the things I'm most excited about is seeing the ability to take projects and look more holistically at them and say what type of funding actually works for what you're intending to develop here. Y'all, we had 11 NOFAs.
13?
19, 18 or 19 in the last biennium.
18 or 19 in the last biennium, that's a lot of NOFAs, and it's specific for funding, and you have to make sure your project meets all of this and that. And so now being able to get that out of the way and actually look at projects and say, what does this project look like? I'm really excited about that part. There may or may not be a member of the management team who's trying to figure out a way to get an acronym in here for either Yeti or Sasquatch, but we're not quite sure how we could work that in yet.
Ed has already said all of the things he's excited about. Yeah, more? Okay, one more, Ed.
I am excited about, again, that many number of NOFA. It was difficult because we just didn't have the capacity to really wrap our arms around all of them. And as you all know, they're not easy to read documents, but everywhere that we had a pain point or something, lesson learned that we wanted to make an improvement, it kind of became incumbent upon individuals operating each NOFA to try and make those improvements. And that kind of led to sort of this growing concern that they were all they had the same criteria, but they were slightly different, and they just kind of became these gotchas that we didn't intend. But how do you make improvement across the board when you have that many? With the ORCA, we now have one, and so when we make an improvement, it's one for everyone. It became confusing for staff as well as all of our partners. So that's the piece that I'm excited about, is this uniform approach and all of the improvement. The applications team, again, we're dedicated to making those improvements. So we finally have capacity to really focus on that. That's the thing I'm excited about.
Okay, so question back here. Sorry.
So if a developer has several properties and they're looking at using bond financing for a portfolio, say I've got 4, would OHCS look at that as a single project? And I'm just wondering, as it goes through the filters there, do we get feedback that says you should only be looking at 2 in as this project, or say I submit 10? I'm just curious how that looks, because in a portfolio, obviously a lot of things have to come together timing wise with your lender, your environmental, all that fun stuff.
All right, so they're telling me that I'm going to take this one. So bond funding projects, so we're not open for LIHTC yet. We're working on that. And I think that's a good question for tomorrow with the LIHTC conversation with scattered sites. If we're talking about preservation of existing properties, it's a little bit different conversation. Maybe they talk, I didn't get a chance to listen to the session this morning, but maybe there was some conversation there. But I think going forward, probably the session tomorrow in the QAP update for how we incorporate that into ORCA. What we do look at is we want to talk about where the projects are located for a scattered site, because compliance monitoring, all of the different elements that come into that, we want to look at regionally. Because if we've got a project in Astoria and we've got another project clear down south in Klamath Falls and they're on the same schedule, that's really challenging for our compliance friends, and we want to make sure that that's taken care of for them. So we're looking more a little closely at the regional areas for scattered sites. Does that help a little bit with your question? Okay.
Any other questions here? Okay.
Hi, I understand the slides and the discussion around like a financial eligibility commitment as 6 to 9 months from closing, and a commitment with the kind of final LOI is 6 months to closing. I'm curious if if the answer to this question is going to come up later, that's fine. But how quickly can a project go through all of that? Like, if there's an external force, like an expiring HAP contract, can we push, from 6 to 9 months to something less than that, or the financial commitment at 6 months? Can an OHCS DOJ actually put together a closing in 4 months, or whatever that timing is? How quickly can a project move through if it's got an expiring HAP contract? I think is the easiest to imagine as an external force that is going to impact that timing.
All right, Ed and I are going to share this one, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong. So The way that the process works, well, first of all, we're still learning. Second of all, we have, as you probably know, we have prescribed time limits on like the amount, how long it's going to take us to review applications, right? We have 30 days. We have also been asked, can somebody do all 3 steps simultaneously? So impact assessment, financial eligibility, and commitment. And the answer to that is no. Impact assessment has to go first. And then after that, so that's to get your letter of intent. And then after that, we can see what can happen. But if you can meet all of the standards for financial eligibility, like immediately, and keep moving and get to commitment, I mean, it's really based on how quickly you have that information submitted and we can review it. Now, we can't turn it around in a couple of days because remember, we have a line of projects that, a bunch of projects that we're working on in each step of this process at the same time. So we are unable to like turn things around in, 24, 48, 36 or whatever, however many hours, 72 hours. Like we just can't do it in a couple of days. The process is not built that way. However, if you're ready, if you're very quickly ready after impact assessment and your letter of intent, that's Hattie there.
Yeah, Ben, that's going to be my team. So I think we can move fairly quickly through the process if the information provided to us is complete and ready to go. So if if you're obviously you're going to be working through your project already, just waiting for that step to come up. So you get your Housing Stability Council not to exceed amount, you get your LOI, your criteria, your required documentation are going to be listed on that LOI. If you have it, upload it. We're going to be watching for those check marks to come off and for you to tell the production analyst, hey, Brandon, hey, Kari, I'm ready to go. Let's review the project, or, any of my other production analysts we have here or watching virtually. So, it's going to be dependent on that relationship back and forth. And, we can move quickly. We get closing, all partners are engaged and involved and ready to go. That's another big piece, as if we're talking HUD, could be some timing on that one, but yeah. Ed, any thoughts?
Just that I think that our goal with the new ORCA system is improvements across the board and included with timing. And so, at launch, I feel pretty confident that we're as fast as the old NOFA system. And I think that as we get more and more comfortable with that and make clarifications, we are getting quicker and quicker at it as well. Yeah, we are still learning. So we haven't had a project totally finished the second step of the ORCA yet, but we have some that are getting close. And so we're learning more and more about that. And so we kind of have a couple record holders. We know that, through the first step, I think the fastest application we had was about a week and a half. They went ahead, uploaded everything, marked it all done, and said, hey, we're finished. Go ahead and take a look at it. The following month, we're able to take that to the Housing Stability Council. So it can move fairly quickly. Again, it really depends on we're saying it depends on project readiness. And so, yeah, with the old system, it would take us at least, probably 6 months just to go through the NOFA cycle and award. And then from there, at least several other months for due diligence. I think that we're beating that pace with the new ORCA system.
Do we have any questions in the chat? No? Okay.
Hi, yeah, so for the 2 project per phase limit, how are you looking at development consultants and partnerships?
Development consultants.
Two projects per step. How are we looking at?
Oh.
Consultants and what would be other partnerships?
Co-developers.
Yeah, we are for the maximum 2 projects per ORCA step. We're looking at developers and co-developers. So if a co-developer designated as co-developer, we're looking at a maximum of 2 per each of those. And yeah, so sometimes that could be a look internally about how you want to set up those relationships. Right, but no, there's no limit on consultants at this point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if you've got so developer A has 2 projects that they've submitted on their own that are in, for example, impact assessments, and they are now looking at co-developing a project with developer B. Are you saying that co-developed project with developer B would not move into impact assessment because developer A already has 2 projects in there? Okay.
Hold on.
Sorry, where the strategy would come in if you've got the 2 projects and you work with that co-developer and say, hey, I think this one should jump over this one, and we're going to pull this one back and let this one move forward. So that's where you can tell us, okay, who are we going forward with for what project?
Nope. Just want to make sure the online folks are hearing. Okay. Who did I miss? Oh, okay.
Thank you. I'm hoping you can provide a little bit of clarity. I've heard mixed messages around gap resources and how that impacts the various stages within the ORCA process, and I'm hoping that you can provide some direction on that.
More specific, please.
Specifically, I've heard that if a project is under construction and asks for gap resources, that you would not be able to move anything forward at any of the other categories until that one has converted to its permanent loan. Is that correct?
Thank you.
All right, I can take this one too. So yes, the intent is to hold the projects to work through the last gap process. So if you've got a project that, and for those of you who don't know what our last gap funding is, it's a bucket of funding that we have of limited resources available for projects to be able to finish up and reach conversion or fill gaps during construction. Or the third priority would be projects that are trying to get to closing. So yes, if you have a project that's come in at last gap and says they need funds for conversion, we would expect that the conversion would take place before you bring another project into the intake to be able to move forward. Once the conversion happens and they move towards that, then yes, if you come in with a project that's in construction, we ask that it be moving forward in the development. It's not going to have to get all the way then to conversion. If it's, we're only 50% complete, holding it that long would be a really long time, right? So we want to see that it's making forward progress and that the gap has been filled and the project can complete successfully.
And to clarify, you can turn in as many intakes as you want. They just won't go to impact assessment.
I'm going to take this one and then move to the back.
This is a question from online in the Zoom. What are the total funds available and replenishment schemes for that? And it's actually a 2-part question.
I don't know off the top of my head how many resources are available. However, we do have it on our dashboard online, and you can Google for that. And replenishment, well, it's waiting to see what the legislature does in the long session that will begin in February, right? Yeah. So we'll know by the end of session in late June what we have to offer.
Okay, head into the back. And I think we've just got 5 more minutes left. So
thank you. Just looking for clarification. I think you said for project sponsors, there's a 2 project limit per stage, 6 projects that we can have in flow. But then I think I heard you just say there's no limitation for consultants projects. So if we're stacked up with our 6, we can hire a consultant and add a 7th or an 8th or 9th. Well, why not? I guess that's
okay, hold on. Okay.
There's no limitation on how many projects the consultant could be a part of, but we are limiting no more than 2 projects per developer or co-developer at each stage of the ORCA application. That's also another distinction. So once the project has moved into construction, that's outside of the application steps. So we're really just talking about the application. So no more than 2 in impact, no more in financial eligibility, no more in that commitment step. Once they've moved into construction, moved on, that opens up a spot to bring another project into our application process.
Okay.
Hi. Given you're running out of money for the Western region and presumably the rest of the state fairly quickly, how are you going to advise people who are currently spending money on projects that don't necessarily know when you'll have funding again, and whether you're advising them to continue spending money to make those projects shovel ready or to stop, halt, because you don't know if you'll have money again?
Great question.
All right, so so I think I would advise that you wait to see what the waitlist process is going to look like when we submit that technical advisory later this week. And we can't make decisions for developers who are spending money. They're going to have to, make their own decisions about if they think a project is, feasible or not, given the resources. Know that we will have LIHTC opening in 2025. And maybe that's a better fit for your project, or your project can be reconfigured that way. We do have funds that we are planning to use that we don't have in the ORCA pot right now for gap financing to go with LIHTC projects in 2025. Sorry, I can't tell you exactly how to do, you have to look at your risk and decide what to do, but we are working on getting more information out to everybody so that they can make those projects or make those decisions in an informed way.
Okay. One more question, probably, unless it's a quick one. You're going to be quick. Okay.
So along those lines, the questions that, Charles asked in this last question is really risk management for business planning for developers. And so with the wait list, is the plan to, once someone's on the wait list, are we going to be notified of like a number, seeing that this whole ORCA is first come, first serve? So we know if we're 30th on that wait list in the Western region, maybe we don't go pay our extensions and just walk away from the deal. That's like, again, that information is going to help. So is that the intention?
Okay. All right, team. Amy?
Okay, so yes, the wait list will be, you'll have a place on the wait list that you'll know what it is. And once we receive funding, whether it's Hattie's team works with someone and they have an up to amount, right, that is in their LOI, but they don't maybe need that much and it goes back into the pot, we're going to be, that's not going to happen right away. I just don't want to get everyone's hopes up that like next week there'll be a whole bunch of money back in the Western region. So sorry. So you will have a place on the wait list so you can make a decision about that. Yes. And it's first come, first reviewed, right? Wait, how are we going to do that? First.
Yeah, based on submission.
Yeah. And your place will be based upon the date and time of your fully complete application. Right, okay.
Okay, was that clear? The date and time of your completed application. Okay. Okay, well, I think we are at time and we really appreciate all of the great questions, and you know where to find us. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the conference.